Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for October 20th, 2025. Today, we're going to be talking about Invest 90L and the potential scenarios that we're going to have to watch over the next several days to potentially weak here in the Caribbean as things are beginning to ramp up. Let's show you how things are ramping up today with the latest look at the National Hurricane Center's outlook on Invest 98L. It is at now a 90% chance of development within the next 7 days and up to a high chance of in the next 48 hours at 70%. So we are now getting to the point where it's now more of a when instead of an if in terms of whether or not we're going to see development from 98L, if that makes sense. It's looking more and more likely that this will be our next named system. The National Hurricane Center says, though, right now that recent satellite wind data indicated the tropical wave located over the eastern Caribbean Sea still lacks a closed circulation but continues to produce a concentrated areas of showers and thunderstorms near and to the east of the wave axis. Compared to yesterday, surface observation suggests that the circulation is gradually becoming better defined, and environmental conditions are forecast to become a little bit more conducive for development as the system slows its forward motion. A tropical depression or a storm is now likely to form, so it is becoming more of a when rather than an if over the next day or two as it moves into the central Caribbean Sea. Regardless of development, heavy rainfall and gusty winds are possible over portions of the ABC Islands, which, by the way, somebody actually asked me about in the comments yesterday what the impacts will be like to the ABC Islands, and the National Hurricane Center lays it out right here. Heavy rainfall and gusty winds associated with this storm is possible over the next several days. Probably won't get a direct impact though, although you never know. So you should monitor the progress of whatever happens. But also, especially Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Cuba should watch very closely because this is going to be a very interesting system. And there are multiple paths that are now beginning to emerge in terms of possible development with 98L, at least in terms of where it tracks. One scenario is this potentially goes into Hispaniola and might actually be a pretty devastating storm for them. And another scenario is that this storm kind of meanders around the Caribbean in the next several days and will probably be able to tap into the very, very warm sea surface temperatures that we have in the Caribbean that have once again been completely untouched this entire season. And I'm going to go over those two scenarios in a little bit, but this is once again going to be an area that we need to watch very, very closely here throughout this entire week. Here's a satellite image of how 98L is looking like right now. And per the National Hurricane Center, it's getting more organized. Although it is still dealing a little bit with shear today, there's still some issues with its organization, but that's probably going to get hashed out over the next several days. And regardless of whether or not this develops immediately, there are still conditions right now going on just off the coast. Some of these islands here, and I know some of these islands here are part of the ABC Islands. So if you are in the ABC Islands, as again a commenter told me yesterday, you are getting heavy rainfall and gusty winds associated with the rain bands of 98L. The center of circulation, though, likely somewhere in the southern Caribbean here, kind of displaced a little bit from the convective cloud area here because there's still a little bit of shear, and that generally has to do with the fact that this is moving very quickly, although it is slowing down, and it will continue to slow down, especially as this gets into the central Caribbean. And then that's when we're really going to see this thing pop off. But once again, just showing you, it is getting more organized. Here's the vorticity signature today, and you are now starting to see some reds begin to appear in the vorticity energy indication, at least if you look on the bar here. More like you should compare this to yesterday, if you remember, as it was crossing the islands. We had a vorticity signature, and we saw mostly only yellows and oranges Well, today it looks like we're starting to see red, so and definitely indicating a tightening of the circulation with 98L, and I think this is well on its way to becoming our next named storm. In fact, I won't even be surprised if by Thursday, or maybe even at least, or not even Thursday, maybe even Wednesday, and who knows, it's even possible tomorrow that we end up getting a tropical system, whether that be a tropical depression or even a named storm out of this system. I think it's happening very, very soon. The biggest thing right now, though, is that as you can see, there's a lot of wind shear in the Caribbean right now, particularly coming out of the southeast. So we are still seeing a decoupling of the mid-level and low-level circulation with 98L. And in fact, you could go back to the satellite imaging and you can kind of see that happening. This definitely doesn't look like a fully stacked storm. I think the mid-level circulation might be somewhere in here. Mid-level circulation usually tends to be associated with where the convective activity is, and then the lower level circulation is definitely to the west of that. Again, because it is being separated by southeasterly shear, but the shear will lessen, and then eventually this will probably begin to stack, and this thing will really intensify potentially very quickly. And I mean, I've also mentioned to you the sea surface temperatures very, very warm throughout the Caribbean, especially as you get further west. And the environment in general, from sea surface temperatures to conditions, things will get very favorable for this. But then it all is a matter of how quickly this is able to get together. And I'm going to show you today at the multiple scenarios in how quickly this might come together and what that will mean for its track and where it'll impact. Starting off with the GFS, and I'm going to show you, let's actually do the 12Z run because the 18Z is not fully loaded yet. So let's just stick to the 12Z. Starting off with the GFS, and they have a scenario where we pretty much see development of the system occur by tomorrow, and because of that, this ramps up much more quickly. The GFS, because of that, makes this turn to the north by the time we get to Thursday, and this ends up taking a direct dive right into the island of Hispaniola. We see a direct landfall on there, and that's probably as a pretty decent hurricane. And then, very interestingly enough, notice what happens here is that it stalls, or it significantly slows down right over, if not very close to the island of Hispaniola. And that happens pretty much from Friday through Saturday. And then eventually, as this lifts northward into Sunday, and then eventually ejects off to the northeast into the Atlantic, and then becomes probably a pretty powerful storm in the southwestern Atlantic once again, or at least by the looks of the GFS, as we've seen quite a bit this hurricane season. But just the fact that we see a pretty much stalling motion that happens over Hispaniola, that's going to produce lots and lots and lots of heavy rainfall. So this is probably one of the worst case scenarios for Hispaniola. And it's especially bad because they have very mountainous terrain, and that leads to landslides. And this is just a utter disaster waiting for Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I know both islands are also not very rich islands, especially the island of Haiti. No shade to you guys, but I just know that both of these countries here are not very rich, so it's going to be especially a struggle that 98L will bring, and this is going to be a very serious situation that happens. And this all happens because 98L develops quicker, and because of that, it's able to take a turn off to the north much more earlier, because I'll bring you here to the 500 millibar of height. It's able to feel this trough that is in the northeastern United States much easier before it ends up lifting to the north, and then we see a ridge build back, and that's what causes this to then stall over the island of Hispaniola or right near it for about a day or two. And even a day or two, it's enough to bring a lot of heavy rainfall, especially with the setup that we have for the island of Hispaniola. And then eventually, we have a small little shortwave that moves through off the southeast and then is able to pick this up and then bring this on off into the northeastern Atlantic. Another model that has a very similar situation to the GFS is the HAFS model, and this is the HAFS A as of the 12Z run. And as you can see, what happens here, and this develops quite quickly. This is already by tomorrow shows 995 millibar system, and this is tomorrow morning. I don't quite buy that, to be completely honest with you, but this is, again, just like the GFS, very quick development, and because of that, this strengthens quite a bit, especially as this approaches the Northern Caribbean and the island of Hispaniola. The HAFS does a little bit of an interesting thing, though, because instead of diving directly into the island of Hispaniola, it stays just south, probably brings a lot of heavy rainfall to portions of southern Haiti and the DR. And then eventually, as time goes on, it begins to back down to the south and also begins to strengthen. And very funnily enough, a very similar situation unfolds, at least on some of the ensembles here, with the Google AI ensemble. And it's funny because the Google AI actually kind of shows both of the scenarios that we need to watch here. Of course, a lot of ensembles here showing the first scenario that I just showed you with the GFS and the and the HAFS model, where this ends up developing very, very quickly, and because of that, dives directly into the island of Hispaniola, and then eventually zooms on off to the northeast and becomes a strong storm. But then there's another half to the ensemble plot here with the Google AI model where this slows down as this gets into the central Caribbean because it doesn't turn north quick enough. So it gets trapped under the ridge, like I just showed you. And because of that, it ends up getting pushed into the Caribbean. And with that scenario, very interestingly enough, you see quite a lot of strong ensembles here. I even see some 930s and some 910s on some of the ensembles, and that definitely does not seem like a very good scenario at all, especially if you are in Jamaica and Cuba and even the Bahamas. And I will say, this is definitely more of a scenario for concern when we're talking about, not saying that this is really a concern for the United States, but if we are talking about any potential for the United States to be worried about 98L, I will say the second scenario is definitely something we need to watch a lot more. And one model that actually shows a lot more of the second scenario, interestingly enough, is the Euro. Still have some ensembles here that quickly move on off to the north and then impact Hispaniola, but you also see as well lots of ensembles that end up getting trapped in the Western Caribbean, and because of that, become very, very strong in the Western Caribbean and ends up being a threat to places like Jamaica, Cuba, even have one ensemble here getting as far west as the Yucatan. And then we'll see what happens beyond that for potentially the Bahamas or maybe even including some interest to the United States. We'll have to see. It all is a matter of how quickly 98L is able to get its act together. But I will say, especially looking at how things are today, 98L is definitely more organized today than it was yesterday. So I would not be surprised if in just about a day or so, this officially is able to organize enough that we could see a tropical system out of this. It might even happen tomorrow, although I think it's more likely to happen by Wednesday or Thursday. And as this is all happening, we're going to have recon. This is issued as of today. For tomorrow, there's going to be some recon flights. Looks like there's going to be one in the afternoon tomorrow. Actually, I think maybe two. And then I think, actually, no, this is for Wednesday. Both of these flights here are actually for Wednesday. We have one flight for tomorrow. So we're going to be getting more information on 98L as things are beginning to ramp up here. And we're going to we're going to have to watch very closely to see how quickly this develops. Either way, interest in the entire Caribbean, especially in the island of Hispaniola, include, so that means Haiti and the Dominican Republic, even Jamaica. Honestly, especially Jamaica. Jamaica is very close by, and Cuba. And I would even say that, do not let your guard down in the Western Caribbean, even in the Yucatan and Central America as well, because you guys might still need to keep an eye out on 98L, depending on what it does. It's just a matter of how quickly it is able to develop. But I will certainly be keeping a very close eye on things. So I hope I hope that if you've not already done so, please make sure to like this video, obviously, and subscribe to my channel, because I will be posting videos every single day throughout this entire week. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And if you like what you saw, also, you know, as you subscribe, think about sharing this video with family and friends, especially if you live in the Caribbean or you know people in the Caribbean. Please notify them that they're gonna have to watch and keep an eye out on things very closely over the next several days. In fact, potentially start getting their plans together, and maybe even plans for evacuation or sheltering, as things continue to ramp up here with 98L. But with that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's video. Enjoy the rest of your evening, stay safe, and as always, I'll be back with more tomorrow.